Hello, friends. This is the AlphaList podcast. I am your host, Toby. The goal of the AlphaList podcast is to empower CTOs with the info and insight they need to make the best decisions for their company. We do this by hosting top thought leaders and picking their brains for insights into technical leadership and tech trends. If you believe in the power of accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Plus, if you're an experienced CTO, you will love the discussion happening in our Slack space where over 600 CTOs are sharing insights, or visit one of our events. Just go to alphalist.com to apply. Welcome to the AlphaList podcast. I'm your host, Toby. And today with me is a guy who just sold his company to another very popular company called Cursor. It's Greg Foster, and Greg is the founding CTO or founder and CTO of a company called Graphite. And no, Graphite is not the visualization tools from the Zeros, which I loved actually. But a tool that came up I don't know, when did you found? Two and a half years ago, or
a little bit older than that. We founded, but we pivoted. We founded around 2020, and we've been working in the dev tool space the whole time. Also, Toby, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. We founded around 2020, and we're working dev tools the whole time. It took us about a year and a half to start building what it would now is Graphite, a code review platform. We were inspired by internal tooling from Facebook and Google, Fabricator and Critique. Some of these layers and styles and patterns on top of GitHub for collaborating on code changes and doing better code reviews. And then as the AI DevTools wave started picking up, we got accelerated. We got boosted by that all in about 2023, and we've been flying since. But we've been working on Graphite for some time now.
I think I saw you literally exploding beforehand on Product Hunt. There was one, I think that was Stack PRs, which you launched, right? Which took off like crazy.
Yes, which is still, and that's the same thing. It's all part of the same platform. Stack PRs was one of the better ideas internally at Facebook and some of these other companies who use Fabricator, like Twitter and so on. But for us, these are all features, whether it's Stack PRs or AI Code Review, these are features on top of just what should be a great code review and code collaboration platform. If you have a PR page, you should have an inbox. You should have the ability to stack your PRs. You should have a really good merge queue. You should have AI assistants helping you leave comments. But these are all features part of a platform for shipping code changes.
So from my perspective, you're doing mostly what GitHub does these days, right? That's what the window into GitHub turned out to be. GitHub is kind of an operating system. There's product management or project management. There's a lot. There's security, etc. But for me, the ultimate angle is still pull requests. What I see most is pull requests, and you basically reinvented the pull request. Let's phrase it like that, right? For large teams, is that correct?
We want to help people keep those PRs moving as fast as possible. We don't own the data. For what it's worth, Graphite in many ways is the client on top of GitHub. You might have an old Gmail or Yahoo Mail account, but you use a more sophisticated email client. Maybe you use a sophisticated calendar client. In many ways, we're that sophisticated client layer on top of your existing GitHub. We treat them like a database. Your PRs are still there. Your code is still there. But Graphite is a independently adoptable client. Big teams love us, like you just asked. Small teams also really enjoy us too. And we give you a lot of these superpowers. We give you an inbox for finding those PRs. If you're a big company, we give you a merge queue, which is critical the moment you exceed about 100 people in a repository. We give you a lot of modern AI niceties, everything from leaving comments to helping fill out your descriptions to chatting with your PR and asking research questions or asking for mutations right there in the PR page and just fixing that PR up and then merging it in. All of these things we do. Again, some of these ideas are new around the AI stuff, but some of these are really timeless ideas. GitHub didn't integrate them, but they've been around at some of the other companies internally for a long time. And we want to bring these superpowers to any engineer without asking you to move off GitHub. If you're at Netflix or Shopify or Notion or at a small 100-person or 10-person startup and you guys use GitHub, still anyone can just pick up and independently use Graphite. And you don't have to move the whole company over. That was such an important thing for us early on. As you know, with engineers, it's so difficult to ask people to change their workflows. That's not how engineers like to work. Engineers like to independently play with something, fiddle with it, try it, get off it, get back on it. We tried to create Graphite from day one with this nature. Prior systems, Bitbucket, GitLab, so on, Fabricator, would say, hey, move your whole company's source control
Over to
onto
us,
a new
yeah.
platform. That's impossible for these large companies. We had to create something that individuals could just pick up and play with.
Even though the question is, I mean, yes, it moves into the background, but still, in the age of AI and code reviews becoming more important, the question is really like, is it still the most important thing, like where your code is actually located, or is it more important than like how people are actually able to collaborate on that, or how agents are able to collaborate with human, or how people actually, how collaboration looks like these days, right? And no longer necessarily on the code level, but one level above that, right? I guess that's like also part of your vision, and you will tell us about that. But maybe let's move a bit back because I didn't like finish the introduction. So you studied CS at Harvard, right? If I saw that correctly, and worked for Airbnb for a few years. So you have quite a lot of infrastructure experience. What initially sparked your interest in computers? Like, why are you a geek or a nerd? What's your nerd path?
This is such a fun question. I've been engineering for over half my life. I'm 30 years old. I started engineering when I was maybe 14 or 15. In high school, I really enjoyed graphic design. I grew up mostly in Reno, Nevada, which is kind of a random place. Not a lot of coders, not a lot of kids doing software engineering. There weren't classes at my high school. I had one older friend who had picked up a little bit of coding, and I think at one point we collaborated and made a free Android game. I did the design, he did the coding. That was fun. When I turned 15, my parents kindly but firmly were like, okay, you're 15, you got to get a job. We're not gonna cover your gas money. We're not gonna pay for you to go to the movies or your clothing or anything. Like, go get a job. And I went around town with my resume, and I went to Starbucks and Red Robin and all these places. I mean, my resume, when you're 15, it's a piece of paper that says your classes. And I tried to get a job, but this was right after the financial crisis, and college educated people weren't getting jobs, let alone a 15-year-old. I'm also not sure it was illegal for them to hire me. It would have had to be under the table. But so as a plan B, I started coding iPhone apps. I had that one experience watching a friend do it, and I was like, okay, interesting. I think I could do this. And so I would watch an iTunes University course on coding iPhone apps. I'd look up, Coding for Dummies books, which was in Java, but I could translate it. And I would just really hackishly try to, I made a pros and cons lab, and I made more and more apps, and they were bad. They were aesthetically good, but the code was terrible because I hardly knew how to code, but I could piece it together. And they actually, this is iOS 4, iOS 5. It was a good time to be making apps as an indie developer. And that was able to make enough money to help me cover some expenses in high school. And I fell in love with engineering, and I went deeper and deeper into it. I kept making iPhone apps. Went to college. I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually take classes in this. This is great. And then I got internships. I'm like, I can do internships. Like, they will pay me to do this. This is fantastic. In high school, it was tough because I was trying to just rush through all my classes so I could go home and code. And then I was like, this could be the classes. I just fell in love with it. And that was iOS engineering. When I joined Airbnb, I joined as an iOS developer because I had many years experience at that point. But I immediately got reorged onto an infra and dev tools team.
Yeah. I mean, if you came from design and then like to apps and then to infra.
Yeah. Exactly. And I'm like, oh, wow, servers, databases, online systems. This is very different than shipping a client to a user's phone. Trial by fire. I figured it out. I learned it. I got really into SRE style work and volunteering on release management and just coding a ton of backend systems. And what I realized, and this carried me into Graphite, was this sense of, building an interesting tool product server. That's fun. That's interesting. However, if you get good enough at software engineering, it's pretty easy. It takes time and effort, but like, it's not a technically unsolved problem. What I found at Airbnb on DevTools was the more interesting question was not how do you build a server? It was how should all engineers work together to build things? What is the art of software engineering? How do you do it really well? How should people work on pull requests? And what are the patterns of committing and releasing and shipping? That meta question was much more interesting to me and much more unsolved. And I saw that developing. Honestly, there was so much low-hanging fruit. I was watching like Airbnb adopt merge queues and adopt something. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 2018 and we're just starting to adopt these systems. Like, this is low-hanging fruit. And so I became obsessed with that. And when we went into it with my co-founders creating Graphite, I brought that obsession of how can we continue iterating on how engineers create code and collaborate together. That's I think my life passion.
Okay, interesting. You mentioned that you pivoted, but I'd also say that like just looking at this space, it must be a constant pivot, right? Like whenever you approach or think that you finally got PMF, then all of a sudden something comes along. Like then you think, okay, now Cursor is the hottest thing in town, and then you got acquired by Cursor, by the way. And then the next thing is like, hey, everyone's using a different tool now. Like I don't know these days. Like tomorrow maybe Codex, and the whole ideal setup of companies also is changing, right? Like 2 years ago, maybe that it was still a thing to have like 2,000 engineers. Now everyone thinks about like 20 engineers and very efficient ones and a lot of agents. How do you navigate that, or how did you manage to navigate that very ambiguous like world? Still with like huge valuations, right? You had like 250 million valuations in your last round, I think, and like with I'm sure product market fit, but not an easy environment. How did you manage that?
Absolutely, yeah. It's funny. DevTools wasn't always a super fast moving space, in my opinion. Tech often has a center point in the industry that's catching fire and innovating really quickly and changing it all. AI is exceptionally fast, maybe the fastest we've ever seen, but there's often a center point. Fintech was this for a little while. No code was this. Crypto was this. DevTools for the 2000s and the 2010s and into 2020 was not that fast moving of a space. You weren't seeing crazy innovations happen overnight. I mean, take GitHub, one of the more interesting dev tools of our time, was founded in the mid 2000s. Throughout the arc of 2010, didn't have major iterations or speed behind it. I don't mean that as a knock. They have done some amazing infrastructure, and I really like what they've done for open source. But it's not like this stuff was reinventing itself every year. You know, it's not like PRs were like there's a new PR page every year. You weren't seeing that velocity. In AI, you actually are seeing a whole new thing every year, and you're keeping up with that. So to me, it wasn't until Copilot and Cursor and about 2023 where DevTools suddenly now entered extreme velocity mode. And as you say, now we have to stay on our game. Now we have to be reinventing the wheel and constantly exploring new ideas and being in that bleeding edge. The other thing I'll say is DevTools had a really interesting pattern where most good ideas have been invented within large tech companies. If there was a better way to do something, to look at a code change or merge it in or leave comments or test it, usually Google or Facebook or Amazon had done it. Someone had done it at one of these companies. And a lot of this was just taking some of those good ideas and then distributing them out to the rest of the industry in a way that teams didn't have to keep rebuilding. It was one of like building a generalized version of it, marketing it, distributing it to engineers. Now it's different. Now with AI, there is a lot of new ideas that have never been done before, and low-hanging fruit that's very exciting, but hasn't yet been battle tested. It's not just taking 10-year ideas and shipping them to the rest of the industry.
I also think that this is because for LLMs, this turned out to be maybe the most viable business case, because engineers are expensive. No doubt, right? And it's a very complex world. And if you manage to really solve this, and there's a lot of documented success cases, right? And examples of code, and you can test it deterministically, or you can basically test the results that makes it very comfortable for LLMs to generate code, right? And then many companies jumped on that. How did that feel? You had that you had that system running, you had that stacked PRs built for many engineers collaborating with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Did that feel like a present that then everyone was jumping on it, and that you heard okay, now OpenAI is jumping on it as well. There's Codex, and no, there's Cursor, no, there's Claude. Did that feel like a present, or did that rather feel like a hit?
It was so good for us in so many ways. So there's the product side, there's the adoption and market side. On the product side, it allowed us to do some cool new stuff. We can get into the game of leaving comments through AI. That's a classic, simple idea. But on the just general business side, it was so helpful because a variety of factors. One factor, people were creating more code than ever before. every year for the past few years, you're seeing almost a doubling plus in the number of PRs per engineer that are being created and shipped to these large companies. Suddenly you have a very high demand for help finding, reviewing, merging in a bunch of high volume PRs. And it turns out that all the techniques that help with stacking are also really helpful for just a large number of rapidly created PRs. Yeah, you can generate them a lot faster, but without some innovation on the other side, the outer loop, it's no easier to review, test, and merge them. That's what we've been kind of obsessed with. So it made a higher demand for some of the things we were already building, whether it be stacking, merge queues, inboxes, and so on. That was exciting. It also made it easier for developers to honestly pay for and adopt tools at companies. For a long time, especially, I remember this in the 2010s, you had to kind of like really beg your manager to let you buy, IntelliJ or like a $50 tool as an engineer, and it would be really scrutinized. And realistically, most stuff was just free or open source, like VS Code. And then also companies were very wary about giving access to their source control, maybe for right reasons, maybe for overblown reasons. Suddenly, with Cursor and 20 other tools, it blew the doors off. Everyone overnight was shipping their code bases over the wire to these startups. Everyone was expensing $20 tools overnight. Our procurement discussions got so much easier, and our adoption got so much easier. It helped the entire dev tools industry to adopt these tools. So we really benefited from a lot of these waves. And I think we're still on the very early curve, because all the conversations that are happening right now in the industry, people are viewing code gen as early solved. It's going to get better. It's going to get better and better, but no one disagrees that it's pretty great to generate code right now. The more open-ended question is, how do you review it? How do you test it? How do you merge it in really well? How do you validate that the code that was generated is actually correct and good and what you want it to be? Some humans got to read it, maybe, or an AI can help you read it, maybe. And is your testing deterministic, or is an AI helping you test it? And you still got to merge that. Like, there still has to be merging systems. That's still, nothing changed. Deployments still have to happen. So that's the new bottleneck. And that's where a lot of the attention is shifting. That's where, again, I'm very excited to help with that. We're not the only company doing this, but I'm excited to kind of help on that bleeding edge.
So you just mentioned, in your answer, you just mentioned pull requests per engineer, and that number has nearly doubled recently. Do you think this is a valid metric to like measure efficiency of engineering orgs, or what do you think? Like, I mean, what like lines of code is seemingly dead, right? how did that develop on your end? Like your perspective on that and your perspective on DORA metrics.
Managers have wanted this for a long time, right? Like, how do you look at your engineering team, your engineering org, and know how productive they are? It's been a timeless question. And any engineer will tell you, well, hey, don't just look at how much I'm writing. I'll gamify that metric. Some of my PRs are really important. Sometimes I write a one-line change and it took me a week and it saved a ton of bugs or money. These are all valid arguments. However, I've been looking at this for a long time. I've been looking at this for 5 years, and we're used by like thousands of organizations, including many of the best engineering teams. And I will say, at scale, actually, it is kind of just the number of PRs being shipped. If you assume that engineers in general aren't trying to game their numbers and they're writing PRs, and each PR is a discrete idea, and it's between 50 and 1,000 lines, and it's some incremental change, and there's some fixed cost to releasing it. It actually turns out that like measuring on a per PR basis is a relatively strong proxy metric to the velocity of the engineering team. You want to look at the median size of those PRs. You want to look at the time to merge on those PRs, the rollback rates, the churn of code. How much is the same code being rewritten over and over again? There's these like guardrail metrics. Every time I've gone deep on the data science here, though, it turns out, in my opinion, you can actually just kind of look at the PRs being shipped. What's fascinating to me, though, here's what I disagree with as a hot take in the industry. You hear these arguments like, okay, hey, if the engineers are shipping more PRs and can do more with AI assistance, maybe we just need fewer engineers. Maybe, a 2,000 person team can be a 200 person team or 20 person team. I don't agree with this. I don't see evidence of this both at Graphite, at Cursor, at larger companies, at friends companies. I don't see this happening. I think that the job of an engineer is not to write code. The job of an engineer is to solve problems and ship great products. You write code to do it, but I also do other stuff. I also write design docs, and I have meetings, and I try to come up with good ideas. I also do DevOps, and I try to figure out why there's a bug in production. There's a lot I do in my art of engineering. The goal here is to solve problems and build some great stuff. I think part of that just got a lot easier. It's a lot easier to write some code right now. A lot of this didn't get easier. My DevOps isn't easier yet. My debugging, it's a little easier. I can ask some questions, but like I still got to go do that. deploying code still takes 30 minutes. I still got to look at a Datadog dashboard. My meeting for an architecture review is roughly the same it used to be. So I think we made all the engineers a little more productive. We still need a ton of engineers. And if we make them all 2x more productive, we're still going to want a ton of engineers. I don't see this appetite slowing down. You look historically, every time there's been a speed boost, when we moved off assembly, when we invented CI, when we created, collaborative source code control, when our MacBooks got faster, there's been so many level ups in the history of engineering in the last 40 years. I can't think of any of these that then caused the industry to be like, great, we don't need a lot of engineers now. And I don't think that this wave will be the one to change it.
So is this like then punch cards to C++, I guess, right? Or maybe a bit more.
I think that's a better analogy. I think it's a better analogy. I think it's exactly. And great. Now I don't have to do some punch card work. Maybe I don't have to do as much, syntax fixing as I type out my ideas. But I think there's just so much good work for us all to still be doing. And I don't have a single shred of evidence to say that it's slowing down. I don't see it on a team basis. I don't see it on a company basis. I'm not having every time I hear this pontification, it seems to be more of a people armchair hypothesizing this and people worrying about an AI market crash or worrying about the downsides of what might be happening. But I'm just personally not finding evidence on the ground of this.
Mm-hmm. What was your biggest recent aha moment when you think, okay, this is really crazy? Like, it's like we like also in the discussion we had before, we agreed that this is like kind of a new abstraction layer to like how we use computers. And I regularly still have those moments when I use, I don't know, Claude or Cursor, where it really blows my mind what is possible now. Do you have an example for one moment where like you recently thought, okay, this really blows my mind?
One that I've been thinking about recently, I don't know if this is a perfect answer to your question. I fund fun hacks. I help it. I use AI to help me read groups of books together. I use it to help write me quick scripts on my computer to do operations. I do all sorts of stuff. But one of the really interesting things I've been thinking about is actually in the process of Graphite merging with Cursor, merging our engineering teams. And we're obsessed with code review. We love code review. Why wouldn't we? We're a code review company. And we built some AI code review, but we really deeply believe that it's important that humans are helping review the code and providing a second set of eyes alongside the AI. We believe in that. The Cursor engineering team doesn't mandate code reviews in lots of parts of the code base. I don't want to speak super broadly. Infrastructure team, certain folders have code owners, but there's a lot of product teams who it's not required. They can opt into code review, or they can trust the AI agent who's reviewing them and just merge in right away and maintain really fast speed. This was kind of shocking to me. And it's not just Cursor. I've heard this from Exa and a few other friend startups. And it's interesting. And when I first hear that, I'm like, oof, bad engineering. Y'all are probably creating a messy code base. You figured this is going to be terrible, And I think that that's an overreaction on my part. I actually think that that's like, I need to get over some of my own biases there. And I'm curious and excited to see, is there a portion of code changes in the world through the assistance of AI creating them, the assistance of AI helping review them, that a single author can now take responsibility and ship that, and you don't need a second pair of eyes to help review it. One idea I have and would be excited by is, could an LLM judge stare at each inbound code change and say, hey, this one's pretty safe. We don't need a second human reviewer. And we say, hey, this one's pretty dangerous. This one we're going to need a human reviewer. And can we actually almost have an intake judge helping make those decisions? And maybe half of your code changes need to review, but half don't. It's the slowest part of the process. You look at the numbers here. Writing the code change can take you anywhere from 2 minutes to 10 hours. I don't know. It takes some amount of time. With AI, it's getting really, really short. Testing the code change takes about 30 minutes to run your CI, give or take. Releasing it, 30 minutes. Again, depends how fast or slow your release process. Human code review is super slow.
Yeah.
It takes, on average and on median, like 12 to 18 to 30 hours, depending on the organization. Yeah. It's insane. And it's not that it took someone 18 hours to read it. It took them 18 hours to like wake up, look at the notification, and actually choose to open that PR. It's surely definitely the slowest part of this process. Even the fastest companies, it's like you're bugging the crap out of your teammate. It still takes a couple hours to like distract them and get them to look at it. If we can slim that down, through automated tools or reduce parts of it, I think you'll see huge performance gains. I'm very, very interested in this. But like I said, you asked for something surprising. This is kind of surprising because it goes against my own biases that I've been working on a lot. And I want to find what's the correct intersection. There's ideas around post-merge review, for example, where AI provides a review, human merges it, and then a human later reviews it afterwards.
So this pretty much, like if I would ask you now, like how software is built in the next 2 to 3 years, you think this is part of it? That like basically we have like we mix responsibilities depending on the complexity of the task at hand or the complexity of the change?
Something that needs to break. We got to make this outer loop process faster. It's absolutely critical. It's not even a question. Like the industry is going to demand it and force it to break and change and evolve because cogen is so good now. And cogen is going to keep getting better, but cogen is so good. So we got to find a way. It's really the validation and the release of these code changes. When I say validation, it's the human review and the deterministic testing, the CI parts of it, and the release part. How do you merge it in and actually get it running on a server in production? That part is very clearly the bottleneck right now. Elements are CI, merge queue, AI code review, complex deployment infrastructure. I think we need to find ways to speed that up. Otherwise, what happens is every morning at these new companies, an engineering lead, a tech lead wakes up and their new grad teammates who are really smart and really, really excited have shipped them 15 code changes each. And now the tech lead has 50 code changes to review that morning. And honestly, like some of the engineers didn't even read them when they sent them over the wire, and it's chaos and it's blocking and it's like backbreaking. We need to evolve this process. There's challenges. If you let's say we hand it all to a really smart AI code reviewer who actually is pretty good at validating and accepting these code changes. I have a new problem, which is that the author might not have read it and the reviewer didn't read it. So now there's no human at this company who quite knows exactly what's running in production. That's now I have an accountability problem and I have an SRE problem. Now when the site goes down, who deeply knows how to fix it? And also, let's say we're running an important system. Let's say it's a Tesla autopilot and it crashes. Who's liable? A human didn't write it. Human didn't review it. Someone needs to be an owner there. So I'm very curious about the context question, the human context question. Like we used to get this for free. When you wrote the code, you got the context. When you reviewed it, you got the context. Well, what if you don't write it? And what if maybe you don't review it that closely? Do we lose context of what's happening in production? And I need that context for accountability. I also needed to write the next code change. I got to know what's running to write the next code change. So at some point you got to read this code. I don't have an answer, but I'm very curious in like these new problems that are created as we pick up the velocity.
Well, maybe it all has to then point back to some prompt, right? Like someone who initially triggered it, then that person is in a way responsible for his team of agents or her team of agents, and for the changes that team of agents made, right?
Something I'm very interested. I love that idea that you just said. I'm very interested in bringing the provenance of code changes, the prompts, the conversations, the models that were used to create that code change into the Git history and into the PRs on a more native level. Right now, it's kind of hidden, right? You look at a pull request, you just see the output. You don't really see the input. Maybe a person wrote some description, but you don't really know how they created that code change. Maybe it was half AI generated and maybe it was half hand typed. Maybe it was tab completed. Maybe there's so many different ways it could be created.
Yeah.
I think there's value in bringing that into the source control and bringing that into the record keeping. It creates memory, it creates accountability, it creates better understanding. New problems. Now my Git repo is a lot bigger. That's a whole problem. But like, I'm really interested in actually creating better standards in that data model and bringing that in.
Creating those traces, right? Do you know if there's already approaches towards that? Like if there's already like an idea on how to do that? Because you don't know who created the code originally, right? I mean, I don't know. My Claude maybe commits that he was an author as well, but that was it, right?
There's discussions happening on Twitter right now. People are really thinking about this. I'm not aware of any current standard or pattern that's been adopted. Honestly, if I have time in the next couple of weeks, I would love to push that forward. Like this is on my plate among many things.
Move Git to the next level.
This is why I'm so excited to be working with the Cursor team, because it's such a perfect balance on the outer loop review side and the Cursor on the CodeGen side. I think working with them, we can help advance some of these discussions and help bring more of these new patterns to the industry.
Yeah, excited about that. I mean, I often had moments, not so much with code, because for me, like the quality of code that the models produce is relatively high these days. But with other docs, like whenever a colleague sends me like that long doc with stuff in there where I think, okay, is it human written? I always ask for the prompt, right? And that's exactly what you would do with code as well, or what you would love to do with code as well, right?
And I'd love to store it. Personally, I'd love to store it in Git itself. It's such a fair and open system. I don't want to lock it within a single company's data moat and gatekeep it. I think if we can store it in the Git repo itself, then it's portable, then every tool can read and write to it. It can go into the source control systems. I think we need to agree on a standard that people can read and write to this. And we need to be respectful that it might create a ton of bloat in the Git repos. But I think it's the right home for this to live in.
Absolutely. I think so too. Can you already say, like, since the acquisition, what changed for you, or what will change for you? I mean, it just closed like literally a few weeks ago, right? Like, do you already know how your future will look like? I mean, you will reinvent the like a lot of the way we working, or many companies work, let's say at least. Like, what changed?
In the short term, not a lot. In the medium term, more and more, and in the long term, we'll fully mesh. But the way we're choosing to run it, when I say we, I mean Graphite founders and the Cursor founders, the way we're choosing to execute this, we have our Graphite office. It's about 80 teammates. And I mean, Cursor is growing really, really fast. But as of a month or so ago, they were, I don't know, around 200 plus teammates. So we actually make up a good chunk. We're like a quarter or a third of the team here. We also are mostly New York based. We got this great office. We're moving into a bigger office. Cursor, by chance, is next door. Their New York office next door. It's a little smaller than ours. It's cool. Next door. It's so friendly.
So that's how you met, huh?
we so many crossovers. But we have our own infrastructure. We got an AWS account, and we have an infra team, and we have our own servers, and we have some great patterns around engineering, product, and design collaboration. And we're really good at some stuff. We're really good at interfacing with GitHub and thinking about Git and code review and online UX experiences. Cursor is really good at some stuff too. They're really good at local. They're really good at AI research that we have no real talent in. We could smush everything together overnight and probably brick our productivity and just race towards integration. But there's not a lot of need to. Cursor, one thing I love about working with them, they're not trying to throw away our roadmap. They're not like, great, we're so glad we brought you on now like, delete everything you've created and just come work on our projects. It's actually very different. They're like, we love what you're creating. We love Graphite. We love this feature of code review you're thinking about. Please keep cooking on that. And yeah, of course, let's have some some integrations and some buttons that navigate between Cursor and Graphite and back and forth. And of course, let's Graphite is going to be a product within Cursor, but it's kind of like Instagram to Facebook. I think we're going to keep running with our own agency and patterns for a little bit and take inspiration for each other and grow closer together over time. But not a lot is changing day to day. I still wake up, I go to the same office, I go work with the same team, I work on the same code base. We're still evolving all of that. The most fun part about this is the cross collaboration of knowledge share. Cursor has some really brilliant teammates, and we're getting coffees and we're setting up meetings and we're just trading notes on how we build these things. It's so wonderful. It's such a dream. Nothing's more fun than working with really smart people and learning from them. And that door has opened massively. That's the experience so far. Love it. Come ask me again in 6 months of how it's developed. Obviously, like, we're weeks into it. I think we're picking up the pace. That's my takeaway.
Okay. How does a success metric for that look like? Or for the future look like? How do you ensure, or how do you think about like stickiness of your product? I mean, you changed quite a lot, right? You basically reinvented yourself quite a lot. How does this look like in the future? What are your thoughts there? Like, how do you ensure that people love your tool, and maybe even respect that some move to a different model or to a different CLI? Is that baked into the transaction as well, or like are you purely focusing, or will you purely focus on Cursor in the future? What are your thoughts there?
I think we're gonna keep focusing on when I say we, I mean the Graphite team as it is. We're gonna keep focusing on the outer loop of software development, which is the same thing we were focusing on. When I say outer loop, I think about the creation of PRs, the review and testing of them, and the merging in of them. Pretty much everything that happens after you hit, save in Cursor or Cloud Code or any of these tools. Like, what happens after you save that code edit? What do you go do with that? If you write, you say commit, and then what happens? It doesn't just automatically, your job's not done. That was our obsession 6 months ago. That's going to be our obsession this year and next year. How do we measure success on that is one of your questions. Well, luckily we've been measuring success on this for years now. We look at, user retention. I have over 100 Slack channels with these amazing engineering teams at Robinhood and Datadog and Vercel and all these cool companies who use Graphite every day. And we talk to them. We're going to keep talking to them. We're going to keep saying hi and visiting them and figuring out the roadmaps of how to build them a really great product. We have a marketing team. We have a sales team. We're going to keep distributing this out to people. We're going to make sure that, in the numbers and in the qualitative data, that people still really like what we're building. And we're going to keep trying to ship some really interesting innovations and keep trying to make it faster and smoother and better and adopt these AI features. I don't know. The one thing that changes a little bit, not entirely, but a little bit, is like, when you're operating as an independent startup, you got to grow really fast. You got to hit these killer revenue milestones, and you have to balance long-term healthy choices with really short-term gains to keep up with momentum, to keep funding the company. What's really nice is a little bit of that pressure is off our backs. We're going to keep making a product that happens to make good revenue, but I don't have to hit some target this year or die, and that's you're always default dead as a startup. You got to keep just running it super intensely. I get a little bit more affordance now to just build something that's really fantastic for users. Graphite's revenue is great, but it pales in comparison to Cursor. Almost every company's revenue pales in comparison to Cursor. We're here to really build something that's engaging and sticky and useful to users more than we are to drive Cursor's bottom line revenue. And that's a fun mandate. That aligns more with where my heart is at, which is I'm here to build something fantastic for the whole industry.
And what would you say, tech-wise, if you really look at the technology, how important is it these days to really have something, or how does that look like for you to really have a moat in tech? Do you have that? Would you say you have that, or is it more the general creation, the total creation of things? I'm thinking a lot about that, because I'm also looking into SaaS quite a lot. What is really the outstanding thing? Is it distribution? And how will that look like in the future? Is it distribution of software, which really is the secret sauce? How do users discover you? You had that product hunt launch, which was quite successful as an example, and then it kind of accelerated from that on. Is that the secret behind 90% of the SaaS companies in the future? Or do you think that the software in itself will still be a secret sauce to many? And how is it for you?
What is the moat? Is kind of the question for us, for the companies around us. I think about the mental framework of Hamilton Helmer's 7 powers. What are the powers and dynamics that can create sustainable advantage for businesses over a long time? These are things like network effects, economies of scale, brand. I think when it comes to Graphite, we have slightly better moat and sustainability than the average AI startup. That doesn't make us better than the average AI startup, but it's interesting because we were founded pre-AI. So a lot of the advantages we had to build and serve to users couldn't just be we slapped an LLM onto it. We actually had to build really complicated, some of the reasons that I think Graphite's quite successful. We built extremely complicated syncing engines to work on top of GitHub. I said early in this conversation that Graphite is the only tool for code review for wide-scale code collaboration that's ever been invented that works perfectly on top of GitHub, and is not you got to migrate off. That's actually really hard. That we didn't know going in, but that killed us for 3 years. And every startup who tries to build a Graphite clone, and all these really smart companies like Anthropic and Cursor who try to build extensions on top of GitHub, immediately face challenges on rate limits and reading and writing and mutating the data and keeping in sync with it. We accidentally have a little bit of an engineering moat there. Engineering moats are never impenetrable. They're just an advantage in lead time, but that one has been surprisingly sustainable for us. The other thing is we've accumulated some good brand and trust in the industry by being around for 5+ years and being kind and hopefully doing good by all our users. People continue to trust us more and more with aspects of their workflow and code bases more than a brand new startup they've never heard of. I also think this is an advantage of take Cursor and Claude Code. Why do people use Cursor or some of these alternatives instead of one of the 40 other code gen tools? There's some brand effect. There's some like the name and you keep using it. That is a true power. And the longer a company stays around and keeps refining them. OpenAI is the extreme version of this. ChatGPT is an ultimate brand, right? There's some accumulated power that goes within that. But the last thing I'll say, and I believe this to be true, as I look around the AI dev tools landscape, 2025, 2026, there's a phrase I hear on Refrain, which is that speed is the moat. And, when things are changing this fast and when everyone can just plug text into an LLM, one of the only advantages you have as a team and as a company is your ability to move really fast and ship features to users faster than the next company can. Can you maintain an incredible pace for a sustained period of time? I admire Cursor. I think they do this in droves for years now. They've been launching crazy new features all the time, reinventing themselves, staying ahead of the competition.
They were born into this crazy pace, right? Or kind of had their inception moment, and then you kind of get used to that, I guess. But on the other end, like you also have to really get used to like huge setbacks, right? Like, I mean, Cursor as an example, like, I use Cursor every once in a while, but I had my big Cursor moment, and then all of a sudden someone told me about Claude at lunchtime, and then I was all with Claude, and I think that's also a new thing, right? That people change tools quite a lot. I know many people that moved from ChatGPT to Gemini now with the last release.
Yeah.
And I think that's also an interesting reality that was a bit unknown before, right? Like you stick to your tools earlier, and I thought like no one is going to reinvent that so quickly, and then you just have the new pile.
I think about this on two layers. So one, I think about Graphite. I think about this for Cursor. Graphite, we're a little lucky that there's not a lot of tools. If you like what we have, if you like inboxes and stack diffs and AI code review, there's not a lot of tools to swap between. We're just lucky that we don't have a ton of competitors. I think the only reason we don't have a ton of competitors is it's really hard to build like a GitHub syncing engine and a complex like PR page. I think it's just really hard to build. With Windsurf and Cursor and some of the in Cloud Code, you could fork VS Code, or you could just write a terminal application. There's a famous right now in last week on HN, there was a really big post that blew up which said like, hey, Cloud Code, you can kind of create a Cloud Code in like 200 lines. This is why it's very easy to create these and swap between them. We're very lucky in Graphite that just to date, maybe in the future, but to date, there isn't a tool you can easily swap off onto another one. Not that we have a data lock and there just isn't, someone hasn't built an alternative. Cursor is very interesting to me because they're pretty much the only mainstream code gen tool that is relatively agnostic to the models. And I think this is an incredible power. Claude Code is great when Sonnet is great. Gemini is great when the Gemini model is great, the Gemini CLI, Codex, and so on. The nice part about Cursor is if you can set it up, and then if each month, if a new model takes the lead, you just like pick the other model in the dropdown and you keep cooking, but you can use a consistent set of tools. And as they layer improvements onto that harness, and as they create better ways, they launched kind of a Figma-esque way to interact with web pages, and they have ways where you can run one prompt and actually fan out to multiple sub-agents using different models. They're agnostic to the underlying. In a world where these model companies are just taking the lead left and right and are struggling to find differentiation, I actually think that puts Cursor in a really strong position over time. I think last year, I was talking to some engineers, they're like, there were 7 different moments where different models technically took the lead on benchmarks. And, if you want to stay on the bleeding edge, pick a tool that can instantly and transparently swap between all these. They're not beholden.
Directly swaps to the newest and hottest one. Okay.
Claude Code does not appear to run Gemini models. I'll be curious if they make that change, but today they're going to lock you into a model.
So before we come to the end, quite interesting discussion. If you could jump like 3 years forward, what do you think is the default day of an engineer? Is it writing codes, reviewing agents, or designing policies?
Writing code, reviewing agents and policies, working with delegating agents, working on policies. I don't think you're going to write a lot of code. I really don't. I think you're going to prompt a lot of stuff. I don't think you're going to write a lot of code. Borderline 0. You might make a targeted edit, but even those targeted edits, I think you're just going to write a prompt. I think it's going to go close to 0. Policies, yes. you'll keep doing it. I think you're going to walk into an engineering meeting. You're going to go with a couple of humans at a whiteboard in person. You're going to decide, hey, we should have this different policy in our code base. You're going to shake hands on it, and you're going to save that to the system. And yeah, you're going to delegate to a lot of agents. And I don't think that humans are going to stop reading the code and reviewing it before it goes in production.
There's some real issues here. Right? No, just referring back to your bias, right?
Yeah, I know, my sense are really mixed. But yeah, no, I hope for the industry, like, I need as a human, I hope we live in a world where, like, my bank and my car, like, some human read the code that was running on that. I hope that remains true as a user. But also, like, there's also systematic forces here. Most companies are like SOC 2 compliant or further, or FedRAMP and stuff. Those mandate human code review, like, or some form of code review. I think to some degree, human auditability. There's levels of security and regulation and important practices. I don't think it's going away overnight. There's a lot of legacy companies. They're not going to stop reading the code that's going into their systems. Yes, maybe the most edgy, bleeding edge startup in AI will delegate it all to AI, but I think human code review will stay around. So you asked the question, will humans keep reading code? Yes. Will they keep writing it? Probably not. That'll fall over. Will they delegate a lot of sub-agents for the generation? I think so. Will they write policies? For sure. The other thing, are a bunch of smart engineers going to come into a room each workday and become friends and eat lunch together and debate what they should be creating and how to fix a problem? Yeah, that's not going away. I think it's a great time to be an engineer. I think it's a great time to be a friendly human who's really good at collaborating with other people. Like, that part of the job is going to
which remain. Not many engineers are good at.
If it's that skill set. I read these on Twitter and they're like, companies will be run by one engineer in the future. Bullshit.
Well, maybe some, right? Like a small bootstrap company, it hopefully still exists.
Yes.
I hope at least.
Yes, of course. Of course you'll have small indie companies.
But yeah, there won't be an Airbnb run by a single engineer. I hope so.
I don't see it.
Yeah. What will look ridiculous in 2029? Is it manual rebases, PR templates, CI/CD configured by YAML files, or copy and paste debugging, or all of the above?
2029 is 3 years away. According to the website and paper, 2027, this is post the singularity and we've all died or something. I don't believe that. That's just what people say on the Twitter sphere. But I'll give you one hot take here. I mean, we can make lots of pontifications. One hot take I have, I'm really interested to see how CI evolves. This is under-discussed, in my opinion. Right now, the world of CI hasn't changed that much. The way it works, you spin up a sandbox, you clone the code to it, you execute your unit tests, you look at the result of those deterministic unit tests, and then you put it back to the PR, and you give it a check mark or not. What's changed a little bit is that now a lot of those unit tests are being AI generated. They're auto-completed for you. That's great. Humans hate writing tests, so this is great for the world of test coverage. But I think that it's going to go further. My current guess of what this will look like in a year or 2 years or 3 years, like you're asking, is that a sandbox will be spun up, the code will be cloned to it, and then a terminal agent will just kick off and it'll have a prompt. It'll say, hey, please validate this code change. And it'll act not like a unit test, but it'll act like you, Toby, my teammate. If I texted you and say, validate my code change, what would you do? You'd clone it? Yeah, you'd run the unit test. You'd also boot it up. You'd also click around. You'd make sure it works if you had a lot of time. You would really you double check the code. You really think about it. You might add some tests. You might extend it a little bit. You might fix it a little bit. You might polish it. And then you're going to save it back. And you'll send me a video of you clicking through it and going through the whole loop. That would be the dream, right? That's like a self-driving test. That's like delegating to a QA human, right? I think that CI might start walking a little bit more towards actually that side, the mixture of determinism and also QA. That's what we would do with unlimited human time and resources. We don't, because it's super time extensive. Curious to see how that one grows. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it yet, though.
Okay, yeah, looking forward to that. CI/CD deserves to be reinvented.
Yes.
I mean, the last big thing was basically GitHub Actions, right? And nothing more after that. So looking forward to that. Now let's look a little let's go a step back and look at history. So your co-founder Meryl basically told me about a secret Easter egg in your software, in your stacked PR view, which is a time machine feature, which allows you to we're in Git, so we're versioning, right? And it allows us to physically travel back in time. And let's now imagine I'm using that Easter egg now, And we're moving back to the year 2015, when you yourself worked as a freshly baked data engineer at Airbnb. And you now, we observed yourself for a while, and you now would have the chance to whisper something into young Greg's ears. What would it be?
Yeah. I had a great time at Airbnb. It was a really fun time to be there. The people were really friendly. The coffee was good. There was puppies running around. The culture was really nice. Pre-IPO Airbnb, it was a blast. It was a really fun time. And the way I chose to spend my time there is I tried to be the best engineer I could. That was just what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn as much as possible. I woke up in the mornings like a total nerd, and I would read O'Reilly textbooks, like designing data-intensive applications and streaming architectures and all this stuff. And I'd go to work, and I'd work on a variety of teams, dev tool teams, notification infrastructure teams, SRE style teams. I did a bunch of stuff. There was even a really try-hard period where I would volunteer on weekends on the prototyping team, working on a TV iOS app. I did as much as possible. And I wanted to be a really good engineer. I wanted to learn what is top-tier code quality. How do I give an amazing review? How do I design systems perfectly? I missed a thing. There was a thing I didn't get really good at, or didn't spend a lot of time on, and maybe there wasn't enough time possibly, but you asked, what would I whisper back in my ear? I didn't spend a lot of time understanding how the company operated and worked. I was very heads down, mostly in the infrastructure department, writing great code. I didn't really understand how projects got picked, and I didn't understand what it meant for over a quarter for a team or an org to do well. I didn't understand what it meant when my sister team's manager departed and then another manager took it over. Or there's these free-floating principal engineers who were really good at getting stuff done, but I don't you just come into a room and tell me some stuff and then leave. Who are you? How are you operating? There was all this stuff that was way over my head. Profits. I didn't understand how the business motivations played into what I was building. I was making releases and databases better and faster, but I don't know. Airbnb was trying to IPO, and I didn't have a deep understanding of how these all connected and boiled down to me. A CTO changed while I was working there. I didn't understand what was happening. So now that I founded a company and helped build it up, and I'm watching, and now I'm, helping Cursor as well, I have a way, way, way better understanding, not a perfect understanding, but way better understanding of all these dynamics. And the best engineers I work with understand what's going on, because as I kind of said earlier as well, any good engineer knows how to build a thing. It's much more interesting of what to build and what not to build and when to build it and who to work with. That seems to define upper bound excellence of problem solving and efficiency and impact within these companies. I was missing that gap at Airbnb. So I would encourage, I don't know, for anyone else listening, if you're trying to be the best engineer in the world, understanding the business, talking to PMs and designers and sales folks and customer service, talk to your leaders, trying to understand what are they thinking about, what do they actually care about. It's a different set of motivations and understandings than just writing really good code. But if you boil that back down and then you actually get in the weeds and build some things, that's how you be the best at the job.
So you rather be interested in the what, the why, and the when,
yeah,
and the business side, right? That's also what I think many engineers got closer to in the last years. But I think in a nutshell, our species is also not perfect in that, right? Yet, but that will change, right? And that has to change, I think, also with AI being around, right?
And that advice is presupposed that you're trying to be the best and most impactful engineer at a company. Not everyone's trying to be that, and that's totally fine too. I got no value judgment on that. Do what you want to do. But if that's what you're trying to do, I think diversifying your understanding of the different business functions and the broader picture is key.
Yeah, I smell that we all have to be a bit more full stack, right? There's maybe no future where you just platform or just data. I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah.
let's see, and let's see how we live in 29, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to that. Let's record another podcast, and latest by that time. Thanks a lot, Greg, for being my guest. Thanks a lot. Yeah, let's set a reminder, and really looking forward to see how you shape the future at Cursor now, and how code reviews will look like tomorrow. I'll follow you there, and really looking forward to see you guiding the way there.
Awesome. Toby, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks a lot.
Always happy to chat. This is such a fun discussion.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye. Thank you for listening to the AlphaList podcast. If you like this episode, share it with friends. I'm sure they love it too. Make sure to subscribe so you can hear deep insights into technical leadership and technology trends as they become available. Also, please tell us if there is a topic you would like to hear more about or a technical leader whose brain you would like us to pick. AlphaList is all about helping CTOs getting access to the insights they need to make the best decisions for their company. Please send us suggestions to cto@alphalist.com. Send me a message on LinkedIn or Twitter. After all, the more knowledge we bring to CTOs, the more growth we see in tech. Or, as we say on AlphaList, accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth. See you in the next episode.
Dieser Podcast wird produziert von Podstars bei OMR.